Hey there, sixth graders. It's Mrs. Martin, and this is your book talk for the month of February. Excited to be back in the building and celebrating all kinds of things. Black History Month in the month of February, as well as I Love to Read Month, and of course the fact that we have so many of you back here in the hybrid model and getting to see some of you in person is really, really great. I hope if you haven't yet come back down to the library to check out books that you will be doing so soon and that we can get you something great to read in person. If not, and if you are learning from home at this time, please make sure that you're still using our curbside service to get some great books and putting books on hold. We'll still be doing that through the end of the year as well. Even though it's only February right now, I am thinking ahead to March and the fact that March Madness with basketball is coming up in a couple of weeks. And here at Valley Middle School, we do something that we call March Madness of Books. We take the top 16 books checked out over the last 12 months and we pit them against each other. We like to look at them on a bracket like you see here. And in looking at those, we ask students to vote during the month of March. We take 1 week in the middle of the month and we ask kids to vote on them and decide what is the most popular book at Valley Middle School this year. You can, for free, fill out a bracket and make some predictions as to how students are going to vote. So, for example, looking at the top left of this bracket, you can decide when the book Allies by Alan Gratz is put up against Diary of a Wimpy Kid Old School by Jeff Kinney. How do you think 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are going to vote here at Valley? Which book is going to move on in the tournament? Which one's going to drop off? And if your predictions are correct, you could win some great prizes at the end of our March Madness of Books. So here's how it all works. During March Madness, you can fill out a blank prediction bracket using the link. It's going to be available on our homepage for the library as well as on Schoology. And you'll see some announcements coming out about that in the next couple of weeks. You do need to submit your bracket by Monday, March 15th, and only one prediction is allowed per person. Starting Monday, March 15th, the games begin. Every day you can vote for your favorite books on your Schoology class page. The winners of every head-to-head match advance to the next round to play the next day. You can vote as many times as you want. Once all the winners are decided, we award the prizes, and if you predicted correctly, you could win big. I hope that you'll consider playing. It's a lot of fun. It's free. It's really fun to vote because if you have a favorite book that's in this bracket and you want to see it make it all the way to the the final 4, the top 2, if you're hoping it's going to be the number 1 book, it's just really fun to see kind of how the votes go. And I've really enjoyed doing this the last few years, and I hope that you'll plan on playing with us in the month of March. My first book to share with you today is a little bit of a ghost story, but it's also a very short read. For those of us who maybe have not felt in the mood for reading lately, this is perfect because it is a book that's about 80 pages long, and most of the pages don't have more than about a paragraph or so of words on them. It's just the perfect kind of bite-sized read for those who are looking for a really quick story. The book is called Dare by Dee Phillips. It's in our short reads adventure section. And these stories in this book section actually are great, again, for those who are just looking for a really quick story, quick read, something that's easy to pick up and put down and pick back up again. In this book, a girl is not necessarily scared of this old empty house on her street until she begins to hear stories about what is happening inside the house. People are starting to talk. They're saying things like, noises are going on in this house. Things are happening without people being in it. And she doesn't believe in ghosts. She does take the dare to go inside the house. She and some friends are doing kind of daring each other to do different things. And she's not even particularly scared to take the dare. She doesn't even see it really as a dare. But when she does take the dare, it's a moment that changes her life forever. I love the illustrations in this book, as well as the way the adventure plays out. If you've ever been dared to do something, and whether it's something you were a little bit scared to do or not, you're going to enjoy this story. Don't You Dare Read This, Mrs. Dunfree by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This is another actually rather short book as well, a realistic fiction story about a girl named Tish. And Tish has been asked, along with all her classmates in English, to write in a journal every day. Her English teacher is asking them to journal. The teacher has said, I just want to make sure that you're doing some writing every day. And if you write at the top of your journal page, something like, please don't read this, or I don't want you to read this entry, I promise I won't read that one. I want to read some of them, but you don't have to let me read all of them. And if there's something private that you don't want me to read, just indicate that at the top of the entry. Well, Tish doesn't really believe that her teacher is going to do this. She writes something ridiculous, and writes at the top, don't you dare read this, Mrs. Dunfree, and figures that Mrs. Dunfree, of course, is going to do what a teacher will do and read it and then react, and Tish is just waiting. Well, the next day she gets her notebook back. Mrs. Dunfree doesn't say anything, and Tish is surprised. So she goes on the next day and writes something, writes at the top, don't you dare read this, Mrs. Dunfree, gets the notebook back. Mrs. Dunfree again doesn't say anything. So Tish begins to believe that Mrs. Dunfree is actually staying true to her word. She is keeping her promise to not read the entries where she's been asked not to read them. And Tish begins to let her guard down a little bit. She starts to actually write things that are truly happening in her life. And this is a good thing because Tish actually has some very big secrets in her life that she is not sharing with anyone. Not with friends, not with a counselor, not with family members. There are big things happening, and she's finally letting them out on paper. The bad thing is she's writing at the top of those papers, don't you dare read this, Mrs. Dunfree, and her teacher isn't reading them. And Tish needs help. You are, as the reader, just hoping that Tish is finally going to stop writing that at the top, or that Mrs. Dunfree is going to ignore it and read the entries and help Tish out. Read this book. Find out what happens with Tish and her secrets. Naruto, the Boy Ninja, by Masashi Kishimoto, are a great collection of stories. They are manga stories that are now available as chapter books in our library. So if you enjoy the manga, you might want to take a look at these as the chapter books as well. They're in our short reads adventure section. This is about a character who is training to be a ninja, but is having a hard time keeping his, prankster, jokester ways sort of under control. He's at a ninja academy. He's training to be what he thinks is going to be the best ninja to ever live. He's decided that's what's going to happen. His teachers don't believe it. They are pretty sick of him, actually. They find him to be annoying. He causes all kinds of trouble all the time. He's pulling pranks and being a class clown. So he's going to have to prove himself in order to actually make it. To be any kind of skilled ninja, he's going to have to cool it on all the jokes. Definitely full of adventure. The ninja skills certainly play a part, but also lots of humor, because this is a guy who doesn't take life too seriously. The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. Terrific historical fiction story. And I'm going to let the book talk do a little bit of work here in telling us about this book. It's set during World War II, and it's about a girl named Ada who, at the start of the story, has never left her one-room apartment. Let's take a look.
normally when you think of war, you don't think of wars that can possibly save a person's life, but for Ada, this is actually the case. And this is the book, The War That Saved My Life. This is actually a Newbery Honor book this year. It's historical fiction set during World War II. It's about a brother and a sister, Ada and Jamie. They have a pretty terrible mother. Ada is actually disabled, and her mom really just restricts her to the house and won't let her leave. And as World War II starts to encroach, the mom decides that she's going to send Jamie off to safety, to the countryside. Not Ada, just Jamie. So on the day that Jamie is to leave, Ada sneaks out with him. So now they are out in the countryside, and they're matched with a woman named Susan. And Susan is really not a motherly figure. In fact, she calls herself not nice. She takes in these two children. She doesn't really get along with kids, but it turns out that they develop a pretty strong relationship. And what Ada finds is that this war actually might just save her life.
Try out that historical fiction book if you'd like to find out what's going to happen with Ada and Jamie. My last book is part of a series, and one of my favorites in the humor section. You may have also seen this pop up on Netflix if you have that at home. Last Kids on Earth by Max Brallier. This series has our character, 13-year-old Jack Sullivan. He has been living in his treehouse ever since a monster apocalypse hit town. He's been up there with a bunch of Mountain Dew and Oreos, and he has been protecting himself along with a couple of friends. He's got a friend named Quint. He has, not necessarily a friend at first, but the middle school bully, Dirk, as well as a girl named June, who is actually a crush of Jack's. And all of them together are keeping themselves safe in this treehouse, armed with not a lot, at least at first, but they're trying to survive because they are the last kids on Earth against hordes of zombies and other things, even a monster by the name of Blarg. So these kids are in a world where everything else has fallen apart, but they've managed to stay alive, and they're going to try to continue to do so, but it's with a lot of humor. So this is not that end of the world story where everything is gloom and doom. There's so much humor to it because these kids, are going to stay, they're going to stay alive. Things are going to turn out okay, but there's going to be a lot of funny things that happen along the way as they try to do so. So this book, by the way, this series, very much, for those who are fans of Big Nate, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, this is a perfect segue to that because there's lots of illustrations within the book. Characters and the humor are very, very similar. I hope that one of the books I shared today is something that you might want to try, or if not, maybe it reminded you of something else that you'd like to come down and take a look at. We have lots of new books up on top of our bookshelves, brand new books that kids didn't get a chance to check out before we had to move to distance learning. So we'd love to show you some of those as well. I hope we can help you find something great to read in the next couple of weeks. And I look forward to seeing many of you in person sometime very soon. Thanks so much for your attention. Happy reading.